Joe Biden, the oldest president at 78, he is older even than the older president to leave office, Ronald Reagan, who was still 77 at the end of his second term. That is almost 2 years older than the current life expectancy for a U.S.-born male, which is 76.3 years and 14 years older than the male life expectancy of an American man born in 1942. Given his age, it's responsible to ask what happens if he gets ill while in office or dies. After all, that has happened to a remarkable 17% of U.S. presidents, 8 out of 46. The 25th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which deals with presidential vacancy, disability, or inability, is clear on what happens if the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office. The vice president, in this case, Kamala Harris, is sworn in to take over the presidential responsibilities until the end of the mandate. Similarly, if the president is temporarily unable to serve, they have to communicate it in writing to the president pro tempore of the Senate, who presides over the Senate in lieu of the vice president, and the Speaker of the House. The vice president then takes on presidential responsibility until the president lets the Senate and House know they can resume their duties. This has happened 3 times in U.S. history. If the vice presidential seat is vacated, the president can nominate a successor, who then has to be confirmed by a simple majority vote in both houses of Congress. The full extent of this provision was tested during the Richard Nixon presidency. First, his vice president, Spiro Agnew, resigned in October 1973. Gerald Ford, then the minority leader, was named Agnew's replacement by the president and voted upon by Congress. Less than a year later, in August 1974, Nixon resigned, and Ford was sworn in as his successor, leaving the vice presidential office once again vacant. Ford appointed former New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller as his vice president, and he was approved by Congress. All positions were then held until the end of Nixon's second term in 1977. But what happens if both the president and the vice president are unable to serve? The line of succession, as established by the 1947 Presidential Succession Act, starts with the Speaker of the House after the Vice President, then the President pro tempore of the Senate, and then cabinet members, starting with the Secretary of State. However, the Presidential Succession Act says officials beyond the Vice President in line of succession would only be acting as President, not become President, after resigning from their office. They will only hold the office until a new president can be chosen. This might happen, for instance, if the vice president was only temporarily incapacitated and, once able to resume the role, could be sworn in as president. Otherwise, the acting president holds the job, and is paid for it as much as an actual president, until the next presidential election and inauguration. However, because this unlikely chain of events has never occurred, it is not clear what would be the limitations of the acting president's power as compared to the actual president.